Kate Forbes is Scotland's finance minister. The 32-year-old is highly respected amongst her Hollywood peers, and she appeared to be a frontrunner to succeed Nicola Sturgeon as Scottish First Minister. This is how she launched her campaign on Monday afternoon.
Friends in the SNP, our nation and our movement are at a major crossroads. The choices that we make in the next few weeks will have a profound impact on our future and on our children's future. I can't sit back and watch our nation thwarted on the road to self-determination. Our small, independent neighbours enjoy wealthier, fairer and greener societies, and so should we. We urgently need to unleash the full talent of the SNP, the wider Yes movement and the country at large. We need to choose strong, competent leadership to deliver independence, the leadership that I can offer. I believe we need someone who can unite our party and our movement. I'm a unifier. I'll reach out and listen so that every member feels valued and able to contribute. That's also important if we're to persuade others of the merits of independence. But right now we also need somebody with a grip on our economy and our finances. In the throes of a cost of living crisis and the need to plan for independence, my years managing Scotland's budget and economy have given me the experience that we need to do just that. More than anything, we need a leader who's bold, brave and energised, fresh-faced and ready for new challenges. Somebody who inspires your confidence as an SNP member and who inspires the confidence of the people of Scotland to vote for a better future. I am that leader, and I want to lead our party into better days with integrity and commitment for the sake of your children and my children. Thank you.
And that's a polished and professional campaign video designed to inspire confidence and optimism in its audience. And it worked. Not long after announcing her bid, several top SNP figures came forward to endorse Forbes for leader. But it would be just a matter of hours before the wheels came spinning off when Forbes said this.
Marriage being between a man and a woman, that is what I practice. But I will not roll back on any rights that already exist in Scotland.
If you were about at the time where you were able to legislate on this, that's been and gone now, but you would have voted against that then because of your beliefs.
I would have. And I think the example that's worth talking about here is Angela Merkel. Under Angela Merkel's leadership, she held a vote on same-sex marriage. She implemented the results of that vote to introduce the legal right to equal marriage, but she voted in line with her conscience.
That's a candidate for Scottish First Minister, suggesting that she doesn't believe that same-sex marriages are real marriages. But that wasn't enough for Forbes. She then went on to give this interview to Sky News.
Is it correct for people to have children before marriage?
It's entirely up to them.
What's your view? Is it correct for children, for people across Scotland to have children outside of marriage?
It's not. It's something that I would seek to avoid for me personally, but it doesn't fuss me, doesn't put me up or down the choices that other people make.
Is it right or is it right or is it wrong in your view?
In terms of my faith would say that children. Well, it says sex is for marriage. And that's the approach that I would practice. But
so is it, in your view, wrong then for people to have children outside of marriage? That's your view, isn't it?
I mean, you're asking me, would I impose my views on other people? Ultimately, that's what you're asking.
No, I'm just asking what your view is.
So,
is that correct? You know,
in terms of me personally, that is the approach I would practice. But
I'm just asking you, you think it's wrong?
Well, I think for me, it would be wrong according to my faith.
Sex and children, ideally just for married people. Presumably given the first interview straight married people. Then, in a different interview with ITV News, Forbes was asked about conversion therapies.
As First Minister, what progressive policies would you bring in to further the rights of those within the LGBT plus communities?
Well, there are already plans around conversion therapy, a conversion therapy bill, which I believe is due over the course of this year.
Is that
I absolutely condemn the use of coercion in any way.
Even within a religious setting?
I condemn the use of coercion in all settings. I think that the use of coercion has no place in Scotland.
So, for instance, the UK government looking at the conversion therapy bill, there's a loophole where it would still be able to take place within a religious setting. Would you look to, as First Minister, ensure that loophole wasn't in place in a Scottish law?
Well, I think that coercion has no place across Scotland. So I think that bill will be subject, obviously, to scrutiny. And all bills have got to be balanced. You've got to get that right balance between permitting some freedom of speech, obviously, and at the same time ensuring that it's robust enough to outlaw coercion.
Now, why is she answering a question about conversion therapy in terms of coercion? One reason is that she may approve of conversion therapies where the victim volunteers, which is actually what happens in most cases. The point of banning conversion therapies is that they're damaging, dangerous, and ineffective, even when a person puts themselves forward. A frontal lobotomy isn't good for you either, and frankly, nobody cares if you volunteer. It's still a very bad idea. The backlash to these interviews came fast. Claire Hoy is Scottish Minister of Children and Young People. She had backed Forbes for, quote, skills, knowledge, experience. Hoy later posted this on social media. I absolutely and completely support equal marriage. I'm unequivocal on this issue. I cannot continue to support Kate's leadership campaign. And Scottish Minister for Public Finance, Tom Arthur, posted this. Equal marriage is amongst our Parliament's greatest achievements, and one that I would have been proud to vote for had I been an MSP when it was passed. Consequently, I am unable to continue to support Kate's campaign. Other SNP parliamentarians who back Forbes, or did back Forbes, including Pete Wishart, Hannah Bardell and Gillian Martin, have now withdrawn their support. In response, Kate Forbes said this to Times Radio.
In this country, equal marriage is a legal right, and I am a servant of democracy. I am not a dictator. I respect and defend that democratic choice to the hilt. That choice was almost a decade ago in the making. I was certainly not in frontline politics. But what I've said is that in the same way that I would defend to the hilt your right in a pluralistic and tolerant society to live and to love free of harassment and fear, in the same way I would hope that people of faith could be afforded the right to practice mainstream religious teachings about marriage. In fact, those teachings are pretty common across the main religions of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and so on. So if we're saying that public office, or at least high public office, is barred to people of a particular faith or people who have a faith but can leave that faith as there are strip elements of that faith, then it is getting into dangerous territory. And ultimately, this is a question of what does a pluralistic, tolerant society look like?
Later, STV asked Forbes how she thought the campaign was going.
Given that some of your supporters have now quit your campaign, are you going to see the campaign through?
At the moment, yes.
At the moment, yes.
Yes, I'm committed to giving that choice to the SNP voters.
But even just saying at the moment, yes, does that mean at some point you may consider your position, just pull out?
No, I'm committed to seeing the campaign
So
through.
you'll see it through to the end, to the 27th of March?
At the moment, yeah.
At the moment, Michael. What struck me most actually with Forbes is she started this thing as the favourite, particularly once Angus Robertson pulled out, but she seems extraordinarily lightweight. Didn't any of her supporters think this might be quite a big deal?
Yes. I'm hoping that because I'm one of the affected minority communities, the audience will forgive me from finding all of this just quite entertaining. I mean, it's such a complete car crash. And how she thought she would get away with this, I don't know. And I suppose it's worth unpicking some of her arguments. So in that in the interview about sex before marriage, she said, are you asking me if I would impose my views on other people? She was sort of getting quite aggressive. You're saying it's fine for me to practice. You're trying to make out that me saying I wouldn't practice sex before marriage is me saying I want to impose it on other people. Now, that would be a reasonable argument if she hadn't also said she would vote against gay marriage, because it's fine if she doesn't want to enter into a gay marriage. Fine, but if you are voting against it, yes, you are imposing your views and your way of life onto other people. Like, it's quite simple. It's completely bizarre. It's completely lightweight. Again, I condemn the use of coercion. I think what was just clear from that, and also from the Angela Merkel line, right, is that she's sort of sat in a room with some PR people and her advisors, and they've sort of come up, no, it'll be fine, we'll just say Angela Merkel did this. People like Angela Merkel, we'll just say Angela Merkel did this and it'll be completely fine. With the conversion therapy, she clearly, my interpretation of that interview is she doesn't have too much of an issue with coercion therapy or the idea of trying to help someone to stop being gay. I mean, the inference of her previous statements is she doesn't think men should have sex with men or women should have sex with women, because if they can't get married and they can't have sex before they get married, that's not going to be a great life. So, I mean, if that were the case, I'd seek conversion, if I wasn't able to pursue any kind of romantic relationship, right? So it seems again that was this holding position that her PR person had told her would suffice. And obviously none of it was going to suffice. And I suppose on the serious issue here, because there have been some pretty terrible takes on social media about this idea that we're saying, I mean, obviously she repeated it, but I've seen people sort of agree with it, essentially saying it's very illiberal if we are essentially barring people from public life if they have fairly mainstream religious beliefs. And I think that would be a problem, right? If it were to be the case that, say, Kate Forbes was excluded from the SNP for having those beliefs, I would think that would be completely unwarranted. Don't really have a particular issue with her being Scotland's finance minister with those views. I don't think this should be dealt with in a sort of, by expelling people or by coercing people not to say things or by censoring people. But what's going on right now is that there is a democratic leadership election. She's standing to be leader of a fairly liberal party, and she has a bunch of very liberal views. And they're not just personal views, because she says this would affect how she votes, right? So she does want to impose her views on other people. And she doesn't think that should be taken into account when SNP members vote one way or the other. It's completely incoherent. No, people with religious views like Kate Forbes should be allowed to stand for Parliament. They should be allowed to stand to be First Minister of Scotland. But people are going to take into account how you vote, right? And this affects how you vote. So, of course, it's going to be an issue. And it just seems to me that if they couldn't see that coming, like, whoa. I read loads of articles, when Nicola Sturgeon resigned, of people saying she's the competent one. She just exudes competence. Everyone who meets her is incredibly impressed with her. Like, if that's the case, I mean, she's clearly not. She's a lightweight politician. And I mean, she just doesn't seem very bright from those interviews, quite frankly.
The thing about her that really captured my imagination was this felt to me like a kind of late New Labour politician. You had lots of these kinds of characters towards the sort of fag end of the New Labour years, 2007, 8, 9. People like James Pennell and whatnot, incredibly lightweight. And the second they were posed the remotest challenge on either a sort of media or political level, they just kind of folded. Another example here is Owen Smith. I mean, I know that's when Labour were in opposition, but a similar phenomenon. We've talked about her views on LGBT rights. I mean, it's important to say she's not saying, well, look, let's not get into the ambiguity here. Frankly, it's absurd. One thing, actually, I do want to say, Michael, to what you said there. Look, the SNP claimed to be a liberal party. People say, it's outrageous. She should be allowed to contend for a leadership position. Yes, in a socially conservative party. Fine. If the Scottish Conservative Party is saying we believe in conservative values, etc., 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 then go run for their leadership. But you don't get to run for the leadership of a party which claims to be pro-liberal. It doesn't make sense. And they said, "Oh, how dare you hold my potential voting record against me as a politician?" Like, well, what else do you want to be judged by? It's not just gay people, Michael, and people who are being subject to conversion therapy. It's also people like myself, Michael. I just want to get this clear. She's opposed to people born outside of wedlock. And I thought actually her response to that was particularly instructive, because I was born outside of wedlock. My mother raised me really as a single mum. And if you're a politician, you say, look, ideally, a child is raised in a supportive environment where two parents are present. Ideally. Long-term relationship, or they're married. That can't always happen, and there are loads of single parents out there doing an amazing job. I think that's true, by the way. And I think that's a very smart political answer, but she couldn't even say that, right? Which I found really, really striking. And there's been this idea, and I've peddled it. I believe it. I still believe it, despite Kate Forbes, in recent years, that the sort of most talented politicians we're getting right now in the UK are at the periphery. So you see Mark Drakeford at the Cardiff Senedd. You see even somebody like, the Scottish Conservative leader previously, or Alex Salmond, or Nicola Sturgeon, this idea that actually the most talented politicians were being forged outside Westminster. Do you think Kate Forbes means we have to revisit that hypothesis?
Well, I mean, she's not going to win, right? So, I mean, if you think of, in Westminster politics, Liz Truss stood to be the leader of the governing party, and she
True.
actually won, right? Kate Forbes is standing to be the First Minister of Scotland, and she's going to lose, right? I mean, maybe someone's going to clip this, and I'm going to look like an idiot when this race ends. But I mean, I would bet quite a lot of money on Kate Forbes losing this race, because she is standing in a relatively liberal party with some incredibly liberal positions. I find the whole thing, a little bit entertaining. I mean, I don't think we need to rethink that more talented politicians are emerging from the periphery. It could be the thing. It could be another example of when you have a party which is in government too long, you end up with less talented politicians because people join it just because they want to be successful. You join that party because it's the party where you get to get a junior ministerial position and then potentially rise up to something like finance minister. I mean, I'm not sure what Kate Forbes' ideology is or why she has stood for this particular role, but it might be because it's the governing party. So there's one final thing worth mentioning on this. Like, the stupidest takes I've seen on this are basically trying to feed into, it's essentially kind of a racist narrative, which is to say Christians are persecuted. They wouldn't do this if it was a Muslim candidate. So loads of people say this, right? And it would be stupid in any situation, but it's especially stupid when Kate Forbes is running against a Muslim candidate who has been asked whether he would vote for gay marriage. He said yes, right? So if she was a Muslim, she would also be being asked these questions, and people don't particularly like it when you have politicians who would support, because not voting for gay marriage is supporting the ban on gay marriage, right? So it is an active thing to do. You're supporting the ban on gay people getting married, right? And whatever religion, people now get asked it in politics. I think that's a good thing, and I think it's a good thing that it plays a role in leadership elections, whether or not people would ban gay people getting married, and then we can go through all the other list of very conservative opinions that this woman has.